What's up, guys? My name is Tanner Thomason, and you are watching the Johnyboz podcast because you're a smart and good person. Don't be a loser. Johnyboz podcast.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Johnyboz podcast. I'm your host, Johnyboz. Joining me today, very special guest, Tanner Thomason. Welcome to the show.
Johnny, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be a very special guest. I'm very happy about that.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, the waiting list to be on this show, it's crazy.
I mailed it months ago. Yeah. I'm just glad that you could squeeze me in. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you've been waiting patiently, so we appreciate that over here at the Johnyboz Studios. Big team running all this. This podcast is just chatting about creativity with other artists and creative people, and I kind of like to start by sharing how I came to know about you and your work. Well, mostly because it's about me. Like the show, I'll have guests or whatever, but it's my name and it's my show.
Good. As it should be. Excellent. Well done.
All right. Good. Glad that you're on board with that. So there I was, a 13-year-old boy hanging out watching YouTube, and Corridor Digital releases this brand new web series called Sync, and there was Charlie Cooper, the badass gunslinging respawning assassin. And so as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, first of all, this guy's awesome. And my whole thing was whenever I saw something that I enjoyed, I would just try to find those people and just spam them on Twitter so that they would know who I was. And so you were no exception to that. So yeah, I guess like how did that whole Sync project kind of happen for you? Because I feel like I remember kind of a funny story with how you got cast in that.
Yeah, man, it feels so long ago to say 2012. Yeah, so that came together. I'd been in LA for a few years working as an actor, kind of doing whatever came along or whatever I could find. And I remember this is before YouTube. YouTube was big, but it wasn't as big as it is now, obviously. And I remember there being a couple channels that I watch a lot. One of them was Corridor Digital, and the other one was Freddie W. You know, they would have those sort of like action videos and whatnot. I was like, oh, this is just so cool. And there's a website called Actors Access. It's actorsaccess.com. And if you're somebody who wants to be an actor and you're in, well, wherever you are, but in particular, if you're in Los Angeles or New York City or wherever, you create your little account and you click submit on auditions that you see. And I saw an audition and I read the description and I was like, oh, that sounds super cool. Like some sort of Mission Impossible cyborg type guy whose memory jumps from body to body, but it's the same body that he just has many of them. And I just thought it was such a cool idea. And as I was looking at the audition, like on the website, I recognized Nico and Sam's names. And I was like, wait, those are the guys who run this YouTube channel that I've kind of been following. And so I went ahead and click submit on the website, but then I also turned around and like tweeted them. I don't remember if it was a tweet or if I like DM'd them or whatever, but it was something along the lines of where I just told them I was a nobody. And I was literally like, hey, I just submitted for your thing and I would love to get an audition because I was in LA and I knew Corridor Digital was in LA. And so I thought, well, maybe I stand a shot at this. And lo and behold, I think it was Nico who emailed or messaged me back. And then sure enough, I went downtown to their studio there off of Hunter Street, I believe. And went in and auditioned and everything went well. They didn't want to, it wasn't them. They wanted to cast me, but there was another producer on it, a guy named AJ Tesler, who's great. And I think he was kind of thinking about someone else for the role. And then Nico and Sam kind of fought for me a little bit in that regard. Yeah. And so that's how I was able to get the thing. And yeah, it was great. It was one of those first like projects where I was like, oh, this is something that I also think is really cool.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's so great. So kind of jumping back a little bit, before that project happened, you know, you said you were in LA and you were an actor and just going out on auditions and everything. How did like what was your road to becoming an actor like?
Oh my gosh. So it's so funny. Like, I suppose there's like a million different roads in, but a lot of them I would imagine sound something kind of like mine, which is like, oh, I did a lot of theater in high school, and I wasn't particularly athletic. I'm not a big person, so like I wasn't gonna dominate in sports, and so I kind of like found a little confidence and identity in like theater and stuff like that in high school. I started to study it in college, but then that didn't really work out. So I just got a generic business degree. And, and I was in my early 20s. Nobody knows what they want to do. And so I was from this teeny tiny small town. So I thought, I'm going to move out and I'm just going to move to a giant city and I'm going to figure it out. And then basically I moved to Los Angeles, dating myself here in 2005. And I just started working behind the camera on like a lot of reality TV shows, just figuring out, I didn't know how cameras worked. I didn't know what a set was, what that meant, cut, action. I didn't know any of those things. And so that's kind of where it started. And then I started taking acting more seriously, and I would get auditions and I book a little commercial here or there, little TV projects here or there. Nothing gigantic, but enough for me to go, oh, okay, like I'm booking a couple things a year. That's better than nothing. Some people, come out and won't book anything and they'll move home, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But I just kind of like dug my heels in and kept just grinding at it. And Sync hit in 2012. And oddly enough, right around the same time, the hosting career began.
Yeah.
And so there was like a point in time in which like I was working on Sync. I was also still working on like casting a reality TV show. Like I've been hired to help find people for reality TV and stuff. That was just like one of the jobs I had to pay my bills. And so several things kind of like all clicked in 2012. Oddly enough, that was like a pretty significant year for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, like I feel like a lot of people have that dream or goal or ambition to move to Hollywood and make it as an artist, a director, an actor, producer, whatever. Was there and a lot of people, like you said, try it out for a little bit and then realize it's not working out for them, and they move back home and try whatever. Was there kind of a timeline you had given yourself, like, oh, if I'm not able to,
wow.
Like, because I imagine that was like kind of a scary period, just kind of jumping into the deep end,
Well, and it's so funny because like, I'll answer that specifically. I had a very specific timeline. But you also don't know what you don't know. And so you can give yourself a timeline on something. Oh, I want to accomplish X, whatever that is. But if you don't know anything about X, then why are you giving yourself a timeline to accomplish something that you don't understand at all?
Right.
So that's kind of hard. But yeah, I remember the original dream for me. The original dream for me is I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live. That was like when I was in high school, I'd do characters and a lot of comedy competitions, and that's like what sort of kicked the whole thing off for me. And so I just thought, I'm going to get out there and I'm going to figure out how to do it. And I remember reading in a book that Mike Myers, I'm talking about, Austin Powers, Shrek, Mike Myers, had decided that he wanted to be on Saturday Night Live and he was going to pursue the acting thing until he turned 27. And if he had turned 27 and he had not gotten on Saturday Night Live or whatever it is, then he was going to quit. And I believe he got Saturday Night Live like a week or two before his 27th birthday.
Wow.
If I remember correctly. And so I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Because at that point in time, I just, really thought the world of him. I did not make Saturday Night Live by the age of 27. I did not make many things, if almost nothing, to be honest, by the age of 27. But I felt like I'd learned enough that it made sense to me that, okay, with this new knowledge and this new experience, I now am better equipped to try to pursue this and understand it than I was 5 years ago when I was like, oh, at 27, you don't know what you don't know. And it's so hard. It's so hard when you're in your early 20s and starting your career in whether it's entertainment or whatever it is, because you don't know. So that was kind of the thing. Yeah, I thought 27 will be the thing. And here I am now. This is so many years later. And I'm thinking, well, if I don't do X by the time I'm this old, then I'm going to quit, and I don't know. That's just kind of how it goes. You have up years and you have down years. That's what it is.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Well, I'm glad that you stuck with it. Cause I love watching your stuff.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, man. So part of, I think the process of becoming someone involved in the entertainment industry is learning to accept failure. And like you were saying, there was a lot of things you didn't get. Was that like a difficult road for you to kind of take those failures in strides and like learn that like no is okay?
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's man, that's such a great one. It's interesting. Like if you're not good, and I mean, and this is true like in life, but maybe it's even like more specifically true in any sort of creative pursuit. Like I don't care if you want to be a singer, I don't care if you want to be a painter, an actor, a dancer, whatever it is. You have to be comfortable with rejection. You have to get very, very comfortable with someone saying no, and someone not giving you an opportunity, or someone saying someone else is better, or that they'd rather work with someone else, because that's, in my experience, going to happen hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of times. And so you get if you're in it and you really want to do it and you understand that this is going to be a grind, then you learn to take those hits on the chin and just keep on moving. Part of that is confidence in yourself, which is a difficult thing to build over time. That sort of resilience to someone saying you're not talented, or you're not this, or you're not that, and on the inside you go, but I am. And so that's just like a difficult thing to build up over time, unfortunately. Maybe some people are born with it immediately, but yeah, there are many times like in the beginning where I just knew I was going to get this role, or I just knew I was going to, I'm perfect for this. Yeah. And, it just didn't happen. And so you just take it on the chin and keep on trucking, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely felt that ring true for me too, because at my current job, I produce video content for the company I work for. And I put a lot of time and effort into these projects, and then sometimes, I'll get notes back. Or one time, I remember very specifically, they were like, okay, audio's not good on this. The video's too shaky. The person on camera is not doing a good job. Like we can't use this at all. And I just remember being like, oh, what do you mean? Like, my baby, I was like,
this art, you don't appreciate this art?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I was so hurt in the moment. And it took some time to kind of step back and be like, okay, well, they want to produce a certain level of content. And what I made didn't kind of reach that level. And from there, it's just about learning from that and moving on, because it's not about like, oh, Johnny, you suck. It was just like, hey, this thing isn't working. Let's scrap it and try on the next one. So I've definitely had my own journey with kind of learning to take that feedback.
No, that's an excellent one. Learning to take feedback and notes, and knowing what is the project that you're going to push back on, and this is the thing, and I'm going to make this exactly how that I want it, versus like, oh, what is the thing for a client, anyone else, someone who hires you to make something, where sure, you want to bring a lot of your creativity to it, but you're also hired to do something specific for these specific people, and they do have a right to give notes, and so it's a good lesson to learn to say, oh, okay, maybe this isn't exactly how I want it, but if I'm going to do it how they want to do it, how do I make that, so that's a really good lesson to learn.
Yeah, totally. And there were other projects before that one where they were like, oh, let's swap out the music here, or let's like shuffle this around and change it, tighten it up. And I also just like, personally, I just take things too personally sometimes. But I would be like, oh my gosh, like, what do you mean? I disagree. I don't think that would make it better. Like I get all stubborn in my head. And then I just have to remember like, okay, this is like, it's not about me or my talent. It's just about making the project more of what they're looking for.
Well, and here's the thing. I'll hit you with this and maybe you've already come to this realization. And maybe you haven't, or maybe someone listening has or hasn't. Oftentimes people who are in positions to give notes, whether this is like any sort of client, a lot of times those people, they didn't come up through necessarily the creative path where they have the skill set or the tools to create the thing. Often they come up through, I don't want to say accounting, but more or less they come up through a math oriented perspective. Like they're running costs, yada, 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 the project, et cetera, not the physical tools of the creation of content, not cameras, not scripts, not performances, right? And so a lot of times these people will just give feedback to justify their position. And so oftentimes it is not an indictment or even an evaluation of the talent of a creator so much as it is, my job is, I don't know, assistant head of marketing or client relations or any number of those like relatively generic sounding jobs, they'll give feedback to justify their job. Because if they don't give feedback, that means that they don't need that job.
Right.
There's no reason for us to have this person. They're not giving any feedback. And so there are levels and layers where like, as you move through this, it's like somebody might hit you with a note that could be really left field and could be totally opposite of what you saw. And maybe that note is brilliant. And then, we have to like kind of get over our own ego to throw it in there and then be like, oh, wow, that was an excellent note. And I'm glad I took it. And you get better at doing that later on. But then the other side is like realizing like, oh, this jerk over here is just talking to hear themselves talk. But unfortunately, I still have to do the thing just to make them happy. And that's life.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah, no, it's like, hey, at the end of the day, they are the ones, sending me that paycheck. So it's their call. And there's something kind of freeing also to not being so precious about the stuff you make. Truly. I remember, so I'm 24 and this, like, I'm currently in my first like full-time position, and I was talking with my dad and I was like, man, like, I feel like they're always like critiquing me and like blah, blah, blah. And I think I was upset about an email or something. And I felt like a situation was being handled really inefficiently and communication was like all over the place. And he's like, Johny, these people they make their living out of sending emails. They no disrespect to anybody, but sometimes people just do, they have a quota or a certain amount of things that they need to do, like you said, to justify their position. And I think part of it was me just not understanding that, but then too, just recognizing, hey, like, things might not go your way. Sometimes, people will say things you don't like, but it's never personal. It's all just, everyone's just trying to do their job, Yeah. That's such an excellent note. I have friends. I have a good buddy, a guy I've been friends with for years and years now, and he does something very similar to what I do, kind of in the entertainment space. And about once every 3 to 4 months, he has a breakdown, and we get on the phone, and I have to talk him off the edge of a cliff. And when he explains it to me, what has happened or the series of things that has happened, like, I understand that a lot of these things were like an inconvenience for him, or not necessarily things that made him like feel good in the moment. But I also recognize that his ability to sort of compartmentalize it and not make it personal isn't very good, which only makes the situation worse. Right. And so it's such a good thing to learn early on that, I don't care how many revisions or whatever it is, like, servicing, even if you, unfortunately, sometimes it comes down to servicing an ego, where it's like, if I have to service this ego for them to go, check, this is good, send it on out, then that's
unfortunately, sometimes that's the job and that's what you got to do. Because at the end of the day, it's like, what do you always want? You always want, like, you say you're creating, I know you're creating content and you've been in this job. You always want a good reference. You always want someone to talk about like, oh, well, Johnny's great. Everything he makes is great. And because what they're always talking about is like the final product, because you listen to them
right.
and fix their problem. Then they're like, well, he's a genius.
Right.
All you did was they wanted their music in. And so now they think you're a genius for putting their music in. Yeah. Sometimes that's just how it goes sometimes in the creative world. It doesn't make any sense at all, but I don't know.
Way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Actually, specifically about music, so I like producing music like on the side, just like in GarageBand and whatever. And we do like recap videos for events that my company will put on.
Oh, cool.
And so I edited together this recap video and I put in a piece of music that I made. And my boss was like, yeah, everything's good. Just swap out the music. I was like, dang it. I was trying to like slyly just sneak it in there. So,
and that's good. You should do that.
Yeah.
There are things like that I feel like are my little like creative things that I'll always just try to slip in. And if it works, great. I feel good. If it doesn't work, I'm like, next time.
Yeah, we'll do the next one. And I did get a piece of music I made in on the next one. So, it all works out. Kind of switching gears a little bit. You mentioned 2012 was a great year for you, and that's kind of when the hosting thing sort of took off for you. And I really was curious about kind of the difference between acting, being on set, taking notes and doing take after take versus like hosting a show. Are there a lot of the same muscles being flexed for you, or is it like two different worlds? Like how does that look like for you?
So, I mean, I do think it's two different worlds. What's so interesting is like some of like, I have to zoom out just a little bit. Like when we get to talking about like actors on camera, like people playing a role, really there's kind of like two versions of that. And one is where someone kind of plays a heightened version of themselves. Like they're not really doing characters. Like, and a lot of times those are the most famous actors in the world. Like Tom Cruise is always kind of Tom Cruise. Will Smith is always kind of Will Smith.
Right.
Meryl Streep is always kind of Meryl Streep.
Yeah.
And we love them for that. Absolutely. Like, we love them for that. And then, so that's like kind of one section of it. And then there are people who take on characters and really like change, that's our Daniel Day-Lewis's, our Jamie Foxx's, people who like Jamie can do both, but like, you know what I'm saying? People who Jim Carrey's who take on a character.
Right.
And so it's like in acting, it's like, it's kind of those two paths realistic. In hosting, I really feel like the only way to become a successful host or which is to say success is probably defined by your ability to make an audience feel like they are connecting with you, like that they know who you are, is to be 100% your natural and authentic self. Which isn't to say that like the way that Tom Cruise is on movies, we understand that in real life, he's probably like that, but probably a little less. He's probably a normal human being. Right. Same thing for a lot of these other bigger celebrities. And so it's figuring out how to be just your normal, regular self. Hosting is to me, instead of maybe turning it up to like 11 or 12, which is like I said, like Mission Impossible or whatever movie, is going on. It's like, what is just a 10? What is just you on your very best day? And so I think about those as like two different, it's hard to define, but like those to me are the two different muscles. One of them is the muscle of like, what is authentically me and how can I be as honest and real and fun in a given scenario? And then the other muscle is what is on this page? What is a part of this story? What is our objective in this scene? And so you're certainly thinking about more things. And is that, and to do that and to tell that story, is that me being kind of a character, someone separate and different from myself? Or is it figuring out like, oh no, this is a lot like me personally, and so I just need to be that version of me? All of that sounds really weird. I don't know if that's a good explanation, but yeah, it's definitely two different approaches.
Yeah, yeah, totally. No, it makes sense. It's interesting. Like, I also just feel like we're always kind of performing. Like, I don't know, there's different versions of ourselves that will kind of show in front of our friends versus our family versus a spouse. Was that difficult for you to realize that hosting is just being yourself? Because I feel like sometimes it's almost like too vulnerable, and if I'm on camera, like I want to make sure I'm a character. So it's like, oh, if people don't like this, that's okay, because it's not me, like, I don't know. It sounds very vulnerable,
Yeah, it is. It certainly is very vulnerable. It's interesting. I feel that, I don't know, it's such a strange thing to try to nail down, but like the people that we connect with the most, I feel like, are the people who we feel like we know the most about. And I don't mean like just their background, but just like have a real understanding of their personality, and so for someone to feel like they know you, even though they don't know you and never met you, and they're just seeing you do kind of a lot of, I guess, what I've been doing for the last decade, which is like talking about random things on TV. The more authentic and real you are, the more it comes across, versus the more that you try to pretend to be something you're not, it will come across as fake. And there's no real, I don't know that there's a real measure of this so much as like you can tell it when you see it.
Yeah.
Like when you watch the evening news, that's not their personalities. Right. They're presenting, right? It's like we understand that those are news people, and that's a specific thing, it's like that's what that's supposed to be. But you don't think that that's who that person is.
Yeah.
Versus like a lot of the random stuff that I've wound up doing, it's very important for me to go about it in such a way that whoever's watching it knows that that's just me. And so, yeah, you have to be capable of being ultra vulnerable, but that's the thing that makes people like you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, there's a risk, but also a reward to it.
Yeah.
A couple things kind of jumped out there. So my sister and I we connect a lot on movies and TV shows. And a lot of times, like, our favorite comedians will be like, oh my gosh, I feel like they're our friend. Like, I feel like I just get them, or like the sense of humor is the same. And so I've totally been on that audience end where it's like, oh wow, that person is showing something that I'm resonating with. And there's like a connection there, which is pretty cool, to be able to kind of create that experience for people.
Well, and some of the best comedians tell the most embarrassing stories about themselves, so it's like, it's the ability to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
That makes you feel like you have a connection to them.
Right. And also I think it would be a really great sketch, if there was like a news anchor that just was that way all the time, and he's he goes home and he's like, tonight we'll be having creamed spinach, and I don't know. I think that's could be the next great short film. Hey guys, Johnny from the future here. Hope you're enjoying this week's episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for checking it out. It means a lot. If you are enjoying it, go ahead and give it a review on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That would be super cool. Thank you in advance. Also, maybe share this podcast with a friend. If you know someone that you think might like this, enjoy it, get a kick out of it, go ahead and send it their way. And let's tell peeps about the Johnyboz podcast. You're the best. And now, back to the conversation. What was the first like hosting gig that you got?
Sure. So it was so funny how I came about it. Everything, of course, I'm sure and are learning, like everything is connections.
Yeah.
And if I could go back to the beginning of my career and do a better job of just staying in contact with people, I don't know, that would be my number one tip for anything, is like, stay in contact with people and keep your connections together because it's so easy to lose them and they're so valuable. I had booked a kids show. I was the villain of a kids show.
Okay.
The name of the show is The Super Sportlets. We shot a season of it. It aired in Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. It never aired in America.
Okay.
You can find clips on YouTube. It was very over the top. Imagine like something for kids who would consume Barney, like that age level.
Right.
And I was like a villain who like tried to get kids to cheat at sports and eat candy. Very over the top character.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is because we had a guest star in an episode, a lovely young actress named Michelle. Michelle and I went on to date, and she was doing a lot of comedy in LA, and she'd been hired to work as a host for a company at this point in time that was called Bite Size TV. And at one point, after it was not too long after we were filming The Sportlets, Michelle asked me if I'd ever thought about being a host. And I had reached the point in my career, this is already in my late 20s. You know, in the beginning, you're like, I don't want to do this and I want to do this. I'm going to do just this. And then a few years go by and you're not doing much of this.
Yeah.
And then, so at that point in my career, I was like, I'll say yes to anything. And so sure enough, she said, have you ever thought about being a host? And I said, no, but I'm more than happy to give it a try. And so she, like I said, she was already working there. And then she set me up with an interview, which went well. And then they gave me like a hosting test. Which is like reading off of a teleprompter and walking at the same time, which is a skill.
Yeah.
And it clicked. And that was like early 2012. That might have even been late 2011. I'm not certain.
Yeah.
And then this company hired me to come in, and I would do like 1 5-minute video a day, maybe just 3 days a week. And that went by for months. And then we went to 5 days a week. And then the 5-minute video became a 15-minute video. And then the 15-minute video became a half-hour video. And at that point, they had several people who were doing their own like 1 minute to 5-minute videos. And so they brought 4 of us together. And so suddenly we had a half hour that we would all do. At this point in time, it was beginning to look like a typical talk show. And then we went from 30 minutes to 45 minutes to doing an hour. And then we found out that some Fox syndication executives had seen us online. And then we got a syndication test in 2014. And to my knowledge, we are the only show, and I think I'm right on this, I could be wrong, but I think that we're the only internet talk show to ever make the leap from the internet to television.
Yeah.
And then syndication. And so that's where things really took off. We got a syndication test in 2014, and then in 2015 we were syndicated nationally. And so I got a national TV show in 2015 because a friend in 2011 or 2012 was like, hey, have you ever thought about hosting? And so that's the weird trajectory that no one could ever think that. I couldn't plan that out.
Right.
So that's kind of how it happened.
That's awesome, man. That was Hollywood Today Live, right?
Was
that okay? Yeah. All right, that's what I was thinking. Which you accepted a Johnyboz award on the set of that.
I did,
which was super.
I still have it. It's in LA. It's not here. I'm in Atlanta now.
Yeah. Yeah. No. That was awesome. Yeah. So one of the things you were kind of saying is, you know, you had this scope or vision for kind of the line of work you wanted to kind of be involved in. And then over time, you sort of expanded that out and gave some things a shot and were saying yes to things. I feel like as creative people, we're not always the best at knowing what to say yes to or no to. And I feel like this happens like in the music industry a lot. Like sometimes people are taken advantage of because they think something's one way and it ends up being another. So I'm kind of curious, what was like your process with knowing what to say yes to and kind of what to pass on?
Oh, wow.
It's like a huge question, I know, but
yeah, it's interesting. So I have said no to very, very, very few things. Have said yes to I don't know how many things
Yeah.
or how many different kinds of jobs or what it might be. The few number of things that I said no to were things that like I was sort of offered a couple roles over the years in Los Angeles that I thought were good roles, but I also knew that I was not the person for that role. And that I'm not sure that I could give the level of commitment that I would normally try to give for this particular role. And was it smart? Would I go back and do it again? I don't know. I could only work with the information and experience I had at the time, which was not as much as I had now. But yeah, I did say no to a couple things early on. Did it negatively affect my career? Maybe. I don't know. Would it have changed anything? Maybe not. But I think, I don't know, the things that I said yes to, and I'm not just talking about like acting roles on camera. I'm talking about like jobs on sets. Like I was a production assistant. I was a casting assistant, a casting associate. I was a driver. I basically have done every job on set out of necessity at one point or another. I mean, and gotten paid for it, like not just doing it for fun. Like I had to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't know, I'm a very big fan of saying yes to lots and lots and lots and lots of different things, even if you don't think that you want to do it, so that you learn a little about it. And then later on in your career, at the very least, you're informed. You know, I run into people all the time who, successful working actors, hosts who don't have that background, who don't know, necessarily how things work on the other side of the camera, or in the control rooms or in the edit bays. And they're great and wonderful people. But sometimes I can also tell that there's a lack of perspective, if that makes any sense. And so the more you understand about how these things work, the more perspective you have and the more valuable you become on a film set. Like I truly think that the reason that I continue to work as a host is because of the knowledge and appreciation I have for the full process. So I'm always easy to work with.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, that's a long roundabout answer. I don't know if that helped a whole lot or not, but yeah, you need to say yes more than you say no. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. No, that makes total sense. And, when I was growing up and making these little YouTube videos on my own, I was shooting everything. I was editing, I was acting, I was learning about lighting, learning about sound, and kind of iterating over time. And I didn't even realize what I was learning until I made it to film school. And I was like, oh, okay, wait a minute. I actually have this toolkit and this like set of knowledge that these other students don't have. And I didn't even realize I was building it.
Right.
But yeah, having that well-rounded knowledge I've found also has been so valuable. And even at my job now, I was like, oh wow, I really am using every little trick I've learned that I didn't even think would come in handy later. And so like it's also interesting because I can look at your career and be like, oh, okay, wow, that's really cool. Like he went from this thing to this thing to this thing. But from your perspective, it's like, you don't know exactly what anything is going to turn out to be. And, you could be one yes away from, being Tom Cruise, or, one yes away from, having to pack it up and go home. So,
that's true.
So it's cool that so I just really like hearing about how, different decisions can lead you in a way you never would have expected or anticipated,
Yeah, you have to be, if you're doing anything creative, and I'm obviously talking from my experience as like an actor and a TV host, but like anything creative, like you have to be okay with like everything is awesome when the pendulum is up and everything is getting better and your jobs are great and your pay is great and the art is great. Everything is great when you're moving up. But like if you're in the creative arts, it's going to go back down at some point and you're going to be in a valley, and you have to be okay in the valleys. Everyone's okay at the top of the mountain. Can you be okay in the valley? That doesn't mean that you're not trying to get out of the valley or the low points, but you just have to be okay with that. And then at a certain point, if you're not, which is fine, maybe it's time to change careers or focus on something else, which isn't to say that you can't, continue to be creative, but maybe it's, maybe the career path just isn't there for you at this point in time. It's so funny because it's like, yeah, you can look back on, I mean, geez, I'm coming up on 20 years in the entertainment industry, and you can look back on it. I can look back on it and be like, oh, well, this led to this, and somehow this opened this door, blah, 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 blah. But in the trenches and in the moments, no, it doesn't feel like that at all. It feels like treading water for so much of it. Like, and you can only tread water for so long.
Yeah.
There's certainly been like times where I've been like, okay, this is great and things are going wonderful. But you hear all levels of people in the entertainment industry talk about it, where they talk about, am I done? Maybe I'll never work again. So it's Amy Poehler has talked about that, how like after Community, she was just like, well, maybe that's it. And maybe I'll never work again. And we go, oh no, Amy Poehler, you will work again. But that's not how it feels.
Right.
Right. So anyhow, you got to be comfortable with the valleys.
Totally, man. Yeah. I remember, so I used to watch a lot of Film Riot, Ryan Connolly's YouTube show.
Oh yeah, Ryan, he's great.
He's a great dude. And he once was like, if you're not eating, sleeping, and breathing film, like this is not the path for you.
Yeah.
And that always stuck with me because I was like, well, I don't know if I am eating, sleeping, and breathing film, but I took out of that is like you really have to love it and care about it and have passion for it, because if you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna go become an actor and make $1 billion and like put my feet up in LA and it's gonna be great, it's like you're not really there's definitely a level of commitment you have to have, like you're saying, to kind of get through those rough periods.
Sometimes someone pointed this out to me one time when I always thought it was so interesting. It's like, what is the thing that you want, like specifically? Like, and some people want to be sitting on a couch on a late night show getting interviewed because they think that's fancy. Mm-hmm. Some people want to be driving an expensive car. Some people want to have lots of money and luxurious vacations, or some people want fame. Okay, well, is that what you want? Or do you want to be like memorizing a script and figuring out an interesting scene on a film set? And you need to know what it is that you want and what your motivator is. Yeah. Like if your motivator is like putting together this piece of art, that's one thing, versus if your motivator is like, oh, if I can become a success, I'll have a Ferrari.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's a negative thing.
Yeah.
But I'm saying like you need to know what your motivator is, because if you want the Ferrari, there are a lot of easier ways to get a Ferrari than being an actor or being in the creative arts.
Yeah.
So that's something to always think about as well, because that's what a lot of people do. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to go become an actor in LA or a musician in LA. And what they want is they want a Grammy and they want to get interviewed by Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah.
They don't want to, be on a film set in the rain and do a monologue.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I kind of want to jump back to film because I couldn't have a chat with you without talking about your movie Faith Based.
Oh yeah,
which you co-wrote and starred in. So, obviously, like I saw those Instagram posts, like those behind the scenes things, and then it came out and I watched it and it was great. But what was that process like for you guys? Like how did that start?
Oh my gosh. Thanks for bringing up Faith Based. So proud of it. Still so proud of it. Yeah. How did it come about? So Luke the guy in there, Luke Barnett, my real life best friend, also like creative, I don't know, creative partner, I guess, for lack of better words. Like we've collaborated on things for over a decade now. And what we used to do is like we used to make lots of little short films. You know, you make short films with your friends, little short comedy sketches and stuff like that. And we had like made some movies for other people and knew some people who were making movies. And our whole thing was like, oh, well, we can make a short film. Maybe is there a way for us to, for like no money or whatever, to make a feature length film? And so we got to batting around how that could work and what that could be. And we settled on an idea and started working through it. And then it became like apparent that, you know, a lot of times to make a movie, you'll need what, at a minimum of like basically 2 weeks. And that's for like an ultra low budget thing. And you're going to be stressed and you're not going to have enough time. And it's probably not going to come out the way you want it to do. Okay, well, our whole thing was like, well, we don't have the time or the money to take off for 2 straight weeks. But you know, we do have a number of weekends.
Yeah.
And so we kind of figured out that we could shoot this movie over the course of like 5 weekends, which is a lot easier than you think.
Yeah.
Now, granted, we were shooting Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so that's 3-day weekends. I would call in sick on Fridays, but I also had a lot of sick time and hated my job at that point in time, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of like the bones of how it came together. Is like we thought, okay, we're going to make this for ourselves. We don't care if anyone else thinks this is funny. We're going to cast our friends. Maybe we'll get together a little money and hire an actor or two for some very specific things. But we're going to call in all of the favors that we've built up over the last decade, and we're going to make this movie. And that was kind of the approach, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, that's awesome because, you know, I wanted to be like a filmmaker and a director when I was in high school, and then kind of when I was in college. I remember a professor was talking to us, and he was known for kind of being a little out there. He was really intense. He said that The Dark Knight was like Hitler propaganda or something. I don't know. He had a lot of weird takes. But okay. But one thing that he did say was like, if you just want to get a job and make a bunch of money, this is not the path for you. And it's like, right. and kind of along with that, I quickly realized like, all right, so I'm not gonna just graduate college, be like, hey, I have this cool piece of paper, somebody offer me a movie. And I, you know, realized like you really kind of have to go out and get after it yourself. And so it's just so cool that to see that you guys were able to accomplish that because, I mean, there's so much that work that goes into just a short film, let alone an entire feature. And it's this huge investment because it's like, yeah, like you don't know what's going to happen with it. So did you guys know from the start, like, this is something that we think people are going to like, or was it more of just, hey, you know, we believe in it and that's enough to kind of go through with it?
A little of both.
Yeah.
So the first thing, it began with us. It began with us thinking that we really had something special. And it began with us. Luke wrote it. I did story. Luke, Vince, Michelle, the director, and myself, all three of us did story on it. Luke actually knocked out the script. And then we went through revisions of it with him. And at the end of it, the three of us really thought that we had something special, something that we would like to watch and something that we would like to make. And then what sort of happened is like, and it has to start there. If you start out and you are just trying to make something for other people, Rick Rubin talks a lot about this, is like you have to make it for yourself. And the more specific and for yourself that you can make it, the more people are going to respond to it. And so that's where it started for us. Now, what happened is as we shared this script around to other people that we wanted to work with, they also responded in a similar fashion that we did. And so that's when we knew we had something a little extra special. Yeah. The movie's not for everyone, but what I can tell you for sure is that everyone who worked on the movie loved it. And that's sort of the dream scenario.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say it definitely comes through, because watching it, I was just like, man, you could tell that, you and Luke are friends in real life. And it's so fun when you get to see, you guys were just enjoying the process.
Mhm.
Like, I could tell you guys were just having a bunch of fun. And that's part of what was so charming about it too. Kind of knowing you and having seen the things you've done before. I'm like, oh, look at him go. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, is there anything coming down the pipeline, from you and Luke? Do you guys have more ideas?
Yeah, so we started writing, let's see, like we worked on Faith Based together, and then we like really partnered up and started co-writing scripts together. And so, long story short, it's tricky. It's so hard. I'm like fumbling for a good way to explain this. You can write an excellent script, and then you can get it in the right hands of people, and they might try to work on it for months, and then it'll go back into your hands, and then you get it back into someone else's hands, and they work on it for months or even years, and maybe they attach actors, and then something bad will happen, and it'll come back into your hands. Luke and I are very fortunate right now that two scripts that we have written and we both thoroughly enjoy are with different companies that are trying to like make them and get them together. We've got meetings with one of them next week. One of them is we're attaching talent to, actors that people have heard of. And so we're kind of in this interesting spot where like Faith Based opened some doors, and then our scripts that we wrote continued to make those doors a little more open. And so people are willing to read what we have written now at very good companies.
Yeah.
And so the short answer is hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Hopefully soon there will be some sort of announcement that we get to make. Truly, that could be the kind of thing that happens by summer. But yeah, know that we've been very busy behind the scenes, like writing feature-length films. We want to make one. We want to make another one for us.
Yeah.
But to do that obviously takes a little money and takes some other things. And so we're hoping that, if we could sell these other scripts or they, go into production or whatever, that'll raise our profile a little bit. Also, perhaps set us up in a scenario where we're like, we have the funding to make a script. And so we've got definitely a couple ideas we've tossed around for ourselves. But probably the next big move for us will be like having written a movie for someone else.
Okay, awesome. I love that. Well, best of luck with those projects. I hope they turn out. Yeah, man, and I can't wait.
It's always so weird to be like, what do you have coming up next? And then someone just gives you the biggest word salad of like, well, I can't really talk about it, but it's really cool. And unfortunately, that's the most you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got a thing that involves